Chapter 1709. Nan Yifan asked anxiously. Nan Yi took a deep breath, but she didn't answer his question immediately. Instead, she turned around first. After her, there was no one else. Was she the only one who came out? Yi. Seeing that she didn't answer, Nan Yifan was a little anxious. Only then did Nan Yi retract her gaze. Everything that happened just now quickly flashed through her mind. After Shengguan Jing said that, Yu Hongshan was annoyed. As if knowing that there was no need to continue the discussion, Yu Hongshan finally chose to make a move. The two of them started fighting just like that. Although Nan Yi had tried her best to avoid them, that place was narrow and the two of them were powerful. In the fierce battle, she was inevitably affected. Some of the injuries on her body were from that time. But this wasn't fatal. After all, she was still a high god and had treasures to protect herself. But unexpectedly, not long after, the surrounding space began to distort, and at the same time, countless light blades flew over from all directions. Her little bit of strength was simply not enough at this time. She only felt as if her body had been ruthlessly crushed by an invisible force, and her bones and tendons were almost shattered. And those light blades, one after another, ruthlessly scraped against her body. Countless ghastly scars were left behind. She originally thought that she was going to die, but who knew that she actually came out alive? Unfortunately, in the end, her mind was in a mess and she couldn't remember anything. He couldn't even remember how he got out of there. As for Yu Hongshan and Shengguan Jing, she seemed to have lost contact with them halfway, so she naturally didn't know their whereabouts at this time. Nan Yi sorted out everything in her mind before she suppressed her sobs and said, "What's wrong?" "Father, Yi thought that I would never see you again." The Nan family followed the rules. When there were other people around, she basically called Nan Yifan father or the head of the family. At this moment, she was calling him father with red eyes. It was obvious that she had suffered a great shock and grievance. Nan Yifan's heart skipped a beat when he heard that, and his heart ached even more. "Yi, don't worry. You're safe now. With me around, I won't let you fall into danger again. I and the elders will definitely protect you well." Nan Yi sobbed for a while before she gradually calmed down under Nan Yifan's comfort. Seeing that she had finally stopped crying and her body seemed to be getting better, Nan Yifan couldn't help but ask, "Yi, you're out. Where are your brothers?" Nan Yi wiped her tears and said in a hoarse voice, "Earlier, big brother, two elders, and I were all sucked into that black wall. But after we went in, we split up. I looked for them for a long time, but I couldn't find them." As she spoke, her eyes filled with tears again, making Nan Yifan's heart ache even more. "It's all because of Yi's incompetence. It's all Yi's fault. If it wasn't for accompanying me, Big Brother and the others wouldn't have encountered such danger." As Nan Yi spoke, she raised her hand to hit herself. Nan Yifan hurriedly stopped him. "What nonsense! How can I blame you for this? If you want to blame someone, it should be your father. In the end, if he hadn't forced them to come over, how could this have happened?" He had long regretted it. When she heard Nan Yi's words, she felt as if thousands of arrows had pierced her heart. Fortunately, she was lucky enough to survive. If something had really happened, Nan Yifan didn't dare to think about how he would face all of this. All right, Yi, don't worry. Look, you've already come out. Maybe Yuxing and the others will come out safely in a while." Nan Yifan really held onto this hope in his heart. Previously, Elder Yu had said that no one had ever been able to come out of this black wall. But now, wasn't he here perfectly fine? Even though she was seriously injured, she still managed to survive. Nan Yifan was actually quite happy. However, Nan Yi's expression wasn't that relaxed. She bit her lip. She knew what the situation inside was like. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was surrounded by danger. Nan Yifan was very optimistic, but she didn't dare to think about it. If she wanted to come out alive under such circumstances, it was purely based on luck. Didn't he see that Yu Hongshan and Shengguan Jing were nowhere to be seen? She stretched out her hand and grabbed Nan Yifan's sleeve tightly, gritting her teeth. She gritted her teeth and said, "Father, actually, all of this has something to do with Shengguan Yu." Nan Yifan was stunned. "Shengguan Yu? Who is that?" He paused for a moment and frowned. But this name sounds a little familiar. He should have heard of this name before, but he suddenly couldn't remember it at this moment. Nan Yi's knuckles turned white. Where is she now? A cold, indifferent, and oppressive voice suddenly interrupted her words. Nan Yi couldn't help but tremble when she heard the voice. Only then did she look in the direction of the voice. Two men were standing not far away from them. The one who spoke was the one in front. He was burly and imposing. At this moment, his deep eyes were staring intently at her. Nan Yi immediately became nervous and subconsciously looked at Nan Yifan. "Father, they are," Nan Yifan hurriedly said. "Oh, right. I almost forgot to introduce you. This is clan leader Yi Zhao of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Standing behind him is Elder Yi. Yi, why aren't you bowing?" Nan Yi was already shocked when she heard the words, Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix. When she found out the true identity of the two people in front of her, she opened her mouth in shock and couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. Clan leader? This was a top-notch big shot that only existed in rumors. It was said that even venerables were rejected when they went to seek an audience. Arrogant, domineering. This was the impression that most cultivators in the Divine Ruins world had of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. And as the clan leader, Yi Zhao was even more so. Nan Yi had never expected that she would meet such a person here. No wonder even father was so polite. Nan Yi hurriedly bowed. "Junior Nan Yi greets. Let me ask you, where is the person you mentioned just now?" Yi Zhao couldn't be bothered to beat around the bush with her and went straight to the point. Nan Yi was stunned for a moment before she quickly glanced at Yi Zhao. His expression didn't look good. But he obviously knew Shangguan Yu. That's right. Shangguan Yu had contracted a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix. As the clan leader, how could Yi Zhao not know about it? He was most likely here to find trouble with Shangguan Yu. To contract a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix. He must be tired of living. Look, even their clan leader was alarmed. At this thought, Nan Yi's thoughts turned and she asked. "Clan leader Yi Zhao, are you looking for that B*TCH2? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 1710. As soon as she said that, Elder Yu's eyes turned cold. This young lady looked weak, but he didn't expect her to be so rude. She actually called Shangguan Yu a B***** directly? Just as he was about to reprimand him, Yi Zhao suddenly glanced at him without batting an eyelid and stopped him. Elder Yu choked and his Adam's apple bobbed a few times. In the end, he swallowed his words. The undercurrent between the two of them was very subtle and Nan Yi didn't notice it. However, Nan Yifan saw all of this. He couldn't understand Yi Zhao and Nan Yifan's expressions, but when he thought of their previous reactions, he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Weren't they here to look for their clansmen? Why did they suddenly say that they were looking for Shangguan Yu now? He didn't know what Shangguan Yu's relationship with them, but it was a little rash for Nan Yi to speak like this. Yi. He slightly emphasized his tone, hinting at a reminder. Nan Yi glanced at him, but didn't take his warning to heart. It seemed that father still didn't know that Shangguan Yu had contracted a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix, right? "Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing." She carelessly gave him a word of advice before turning her head away. Nan Yifan wanted to say something, but seeing the subtle atmosphere, he shut his mouth in the end. Yi Zhao looked at Nan Yi from head to toe. His gaze was substantial and carried a heavy pressure. Nan Yi couldn't help but feel timid. Just when she almost couldn't take it anymore, Yi Zhao finally retracted his gaze. Only then did Nan Yi feel relieved. That's right. Yi Zhao was still expressionless and unfathomable. "I'm indeed looking for her." Hearing his affirmative answer, Nan Yi was even more convinced of her previous guess. He must have found out about that contracted fiend, so he came all the way here. For a moment, Nan Yi felt smug and regretful. She was smug because after offending the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, Shangguan Yu was definitely doomed. Unfortunately, she seemed to still be trapped in that black wall until now, and no one knew if she was dead or alive. If Shangguan Yu was already dead inside, wouldn't she not be able to see her being tortured? She felt that it was a pity. She sighed and said, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. The only thing I can be sure of now is that she's still there. But I don't know if she's alive or dead or if she can come out in the end. Yi Zhao furrowed his brows quickly. Actually, this result was within his expectations. Previously, you said that everything was Shang Guanyu's fault? What's going on? Tell me in detail. Yi Zhao's tone was calm and indifferent, yet it was noble and arrogant, and it caused others to unconsciously feel reverence and submission. Nan Yi loosened and tightened her grip. This matter, we have to start from a few days ago. After that, Nan Yi told him everything that had happened over the past few days. Of course, she ignored the few times she provoked them and took the initiative to find trouble with them. She emphasized how Shang Guanyu was rude and attacked them forcefully. The most important thing was that Shang Guanyu tried to kill her, but in the end, everyone was swallowed by the black wall. According to her, everything seemed to be caused by Shang Guanyu. From the beginning to the end, she didn't even mention Rong Xiu's name. When outsiders heard this, they would naturally think that Shang Guanyu was an arrogant, domineering, unreasonable, selfish, and ruthless person. She was also the one who put everyone in a life-and-death situation. Elder Yu couldn't continue listening after hearing a few sentences. It wasn't like he hadn't interacted with that girl before. Nan Yi's words were obviously not trustworthy. He didn't know how Shang Guanyu had offended her. She was actually trying so hard to smear their name. It was as if she couldn't wait to kill them forever. Could it be that it was just because they were all swallowed by the black wall? That's it. After Nan Yi finished speaking, she glanced at Yi Zhao carefully. Unfortunately, Yi Zhao's expression didn't change. Nan Yi couldn't guess what he was thinking at this time. On the other hand, Nan Yifan and the others were shocked by her words. Yi, you're saying that Shang Guanyu contracted a crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Nan Yi nodded. I don't know what method Shang Guanyu used. And that crimson gold heavenly phoenix is very obedient to her. Nan Yifan frowned. Since it's a contracted divine beast, it's normal. No wonder Nan Yi dared to say so earlier. There was such a shocking secret behind it. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix was an ancient divine beast and had always been extremely arrogant. They didn't even bother to interact with humans, let alone contract. This was undoubtedly a stain on their entire race. It was no wonder that Yi Zhao would take action personally. He was so nervous previously because he was looking for the contracted crimson gold heavenly phoenix. But Nan Yi suddenly thought of something and spoke hesitantly. There seems to be something wrong with that crimson gold heavenly phoenix. She can already transform into a human form, but she looks only 3 or 4 years old. Oh! Nan Yifan couldn't help but be shocked. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan could only transform into a human form after reaching adulthood, right? How could such a situation happen? In that case, that Shang Guanyu did use some special method? He was puzzled and looked at Yi Zhao and Elder Yu inquisitively. Unfortunately, the other party was more thoughtful and unpredictable than him. Nan Yifan couldn't tell what they were thinking at this time. How did you come out? Yi Zhao suddenly asked. Nan Yi had already thought of an answer, but there was still some panic and fear on her face. At that time, I was walking inside when I suddenly felt the surrounding space start to squeeze crazily. After some time, a strong force came. When I opened my eyes again, I found that I was already out. In other words, she didn't know what was going on either. Yourself? Elder Yu, who had been silent all this time, spoke. Nan Yi hesitated for a moment. Elder Yu smiled meaningfully. That second Miss Nan is really amazing. She can actually walk around freely in there with the strength of a transcendent god? As far as I know, it seems to be quite dangerous inside, right? If second Miss Nan encountered that situation, then the others should be the same. But now, only second Miss Nan came out alone. She is really amazing. Nan Yi suddenly felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell exactly what was wrong. She could only smile awkwardly. Actually, I was just a little lucky, Boz. A roar came from the black wall again. Everyone looked up and saw another figure falling out of the hole. Nan Yi's heart instantly jumped to her throat. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1711. That person looked up. A face full of bloodstains entered everyone's eyes. However, Nan Yi's heart instantly calmed down. Yuxing! Nan Yifan was the first to react. He shouted and immediately rushed over to help him up. Not only was Nan Yuxing's face covered in blood, but his clothes were also soaked in blood. His eyes were tightly shut, and his breathing was weak. It was obvious that he had fainted. The thick smell of blood covered the sky and shrouded the earth. Nan Yifan was extremely anxious. Yuxing! Yuxing! Wake up! Nan Yuxing's eyelids seemed to move, but he still couldn't open his eyes. Nan Yi and the two elders also rushed over at this time. Patriarch, please allow me to take eldest young master's pulse first. One of the elders said respectfully. Nan Yifan woke up and hurriedly stepped aside. Yes. Jianghu, you do it. Elder Jianghu stepped forward and placed his fingers on Nan Yuxing's wrist. After a moment, his expression suddenly changed. A strong sense of uneasiness surged in Nan Yifan's heart. Jianghu, how is it? Elder Jianghu seemed to be in disbelief as he took the pulse again. However, the result was the same this time. He was silent for a while before he retracted his hand. He sighed and cupped his hands at Nan Yifan. Patriarch, eldest young master's pearl of essence has shattered. What? Nan Yifan's mind went blank, and his figure suddenly staggered. Father! Nan Yi hurriedly went forward to support him and couldn't help but look at Elder Jianghu. Eldest brother is extremely powerful. How could his pearl of essence have shattered? Elder Jianghu, are you sure you're not mistaken? Elder Jianghu said helplessly. If Patriarch and Second Miss don't believe me, you can check it yourself. Jianghu didn't dare to say such things. Everyone knew that Nan Yuxing was the next patriarch of the Nan family. The shattering of his pearl of essence meant that he would be a cripple from now on. Then he would definitely not be able to become the patriarch in this life. If he hadn't confirmed it repeatedly, Elder Jianghu wouldn't have dared to say this. Nan Yi was speechless. Her chest seemed to be blocked by something, and she felt suffocated. She turned her neck stiffly and looked at Nan Yuxing. At this moment, Nan Yuxing finally woke up. Big brother! Nan Yi pounced over. Nan Yuxing's vision was still blurry, but he no longer cared. He ignored Nan Yi and looked at Elder Jianghu with a dazed expression as he asked, "What's wrong? What you said just now, is it true?" In fact, he had been awake for a long time, but he couldn't open his eyes. However, he could hear everything around him clearly. Naturally, Elder Jianghu's words were included as well. Elder Jianghu looked away and sighed. Whether it's true or not, eldest young master, shouldn't you know best? That was his core of essence. It was the source of his cultivation. Now that his origin core had shattered, all of the origin power in his body was rapidly escaping out of his body. How could he not feel it? Nan Yuxing's face was expressionless. After a long while, the corners of his mouth twitched with difficulty. That's true. In fact, he had felt it long ago, but he still didn't dare to believe it. From the moment he was born, he was a proud son of heaven. Who would have thought that one day his core of essence would shatter and he would become a cripple? To him, Nan Yifan, and Nan Yi who were present, this was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue. Big brother! Nan Yi hugged him and cried. However, Nan Yuxing didn't have any reaction. He stared blankly at the void for a long time before he closed his eyes. He originally thought that he would die in there, but who knew that coming out would be even worse than death? Nan Yifan clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white and the veins on his forehead bulged. Jianghu, help him deal with his injuries first. Nan Yifan looked calm and composed, but his voice was already hoarse. He had high hopes for Nan Yuxing, and this was undoubtedly a wake-up call. However, he definitely couldn't break down in front of so many people. He couldn't even show too much abnormality. Elder Jianghu responded and began to treat Nan Yuxing's injuries. His condition was much more serious than Nanny's. In addition to external injuries, internal injuries were even more difficult to treat. His core of essence had shattered. It was really fortunate that he was able to survive. Of course, Nan Yuxing obviously didn't want this fortune himself. He closed his eyes and his face was ashen. It was obvious that he no longer had any motivation to live. Elder Jean, he was a little anxious and whispered to Nanny. Second Miss, eldest young master has no intention of living. I'm afraid it won't be good if this continues. Nan Yi wiped away her tears. Actually, if she was Big Brother, she probably didn't want to live anymore. But she couldn't just watch Big Brother die like this. She took a deep breath and leaned closer. Big Brother, we haven't taken revenge yet. You must persevere. Don't you want to see what will happen to that B*TCH who reduced us to such a state? Nan Yi gritted her teeth as she said these words. Every word carried a deep hatred and resentment that couldn't be dispelled. She blamed all of this on that one person. At the same time, she pointed all the spearheads at that person. Finally, those words managed to move Nan Yuxing. With great difficulty, he slowly opened his eyes. His originally lifeless and despairing eyes were gradually filled with deep hatred. That's right. All of this was that Shang Guanyu's fault. If it wasn't for her, they wouldn't have been involved in that, and he wouldn't have become like this. His entire life had been ruined by the other party. Where is she? Nan Yuxing gritted his teeth and spat out a few words. It was as if as long as Chu Luiwei appeared in front of him now, he would immediately suck her blood and eat her flesh. Nan Yi cooperated with Elder Jean He to treat his injuries while comforting him. Big Brother, she hasn't come out yet. But since we've all come out, she will definitely come out too. When the time comes, we'll settle this score with her properly. Nan Yuxing held his breath. He had to live. He had to watch them suffer with his own eyes. With the support of this thought, Nan Yuxing actually managed to endure it. Everyone fell silent and began to wait. Who else would come out next? Elder Yu glanced at Nan Yuxing with a serious expression. He wasn't worried about Nan Yuxing, but, judging from Nan Yuxing's injuries, the situation inside was probably not optimistic. Moreover, 2 people from the Nan family had already come out, but Dumpling and the rest were still nowhere to be seen. He looked at Yi Zhao and realized that Yi Zhao was staring at the black wall with a strange expression. He was about to ask something when he suddenly heard Yi Zhao shout. Sepa. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1712. Elder Yi Zhao didn't even think before he tapped the tip of his foot on the ground and flashed backwards. Immediately after, a ripple suddenly rose from the black wall. Whoosh, like a surging river, waves surging. The surrounding heaven and earth energy seemed to be affected by this force and started to surge. The huge totem on the wall suddenly spun faster. A violent and majestic aura surged out from it. Nan Yifan and the rest were the first to bear the brunt. They didn't even have time to set up a barrier before they were enveloped by the terrifying force. Under the impact of this power, the figures of several people instantly flew out uncontrollably. In a hurry, Nan Yifan hurriedly pulled Nan Yuxing. But before he could pull him, he missed. Bang! They fell to the ground one after another. Nan Yuxing's chest shook, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. Yuxing! Big Brother! Nan Yifan and the rest struggled to get up. Seeing this scene, they were almost scared out of their wits. But at this moment, a few figures rushed out from the black wall. Nan Yifan saw the 2 people in front clearly. Elder Wu Peng. Elder Bai Tong. He had just helped Nan Yuxing up and was about to go over when he suddenly heard a crisp sound. Something seemed to have broken. Nan Yifan suddenly thought of something, and his eyes widened. He quickly took out a jade token. Of the 4 light spots inside, there were now only 3. Among them, the one that belonged to Elder Bai Tong had broken. Elder Bai Tong was dead. He sucked in a cold breath. The remaining 2 elders hurried over. Elder Wu Peng, how are you? Although Elder Wu Peng was still conscious, his face and body were stained with blood, and his breath was weak. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. Elder Jean He immediately helped him treat his injuries. The other elder came to Elder Bai Tong's side and realized that he was no longer breathing. He looked at Nan Yifan in panic. Family head, Elder Bai Tong. Nan Yifan closed his eyes and waved his hand. That elder immediately understood what he meant. With a heavy heart, he moved Elder Bai Tong's body to the side, preparing to bring it back for burial. Nan Yifan glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw that a section of Elder Bai Tong's calf had been cut off. He frowned. Elder Bai Tong's leg. What's going on? It doesn't look like a recent injury. Nan Yi hesitated for a moment. She had only mentioned that Elder Bai Tong had been injured during the battle with Shangguanyu, but she had not mentioned that his leg had been cut off by Rong Xiu. That is, before she could explain, another figure fell out of the black wall. Nan Yi instinctively looked over and her eyes lit up. Uncle Luo Yen. The man who fell to the ground and stood up with one hand supporting himself was none other than Luo Yen. Hearing this voice, Luo Yen looked up. When he saw Nan Yi, he heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he turned his gaze and saw Nan Yifan and the others. It turned out that they had already arrived. Luo Yen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and was about to walk towards them when he suddenly felt a chill all over his body. He immediately became alert. His entire body tensed up. At this moment, he realized that there were two men standing not far away from Nan Yifan and the others. They were burly and had unfamiliar faces. However, they were extremely strong. When he saw the appearance of the man standing in front of him, Luo Yen suddenly thought of something and his expression changed slightly. This person was Luo Yen. Nan Yifan walked over and sized him up. After confirming that he had only suffered some minor injuries, he heaved a sigh of relief. At this point, all of their people had come out. Other than Elder Bai Tong, Elder Wu Peng and Nan Yuxing were both seriously injured. Nan Yi and Luo Yen were in a slightly better condition, but they obviously needed a long time to recuperate. He wondered if there would be any side effects. Nan Yifan had mixed feelings. On one hand, he was glad that these people, except for Elder Bai Tong, had all come out alive. On the other hand, the battle was tragic and their injuries were serious. Especially Nan Yuxing, who had become a cripple. It was more painful for him than death. At the same time, it also made Nan Yifan's heart ache. Luo Yen nodded. Patriarch, don't worry. I'm fine. He quickly scanned his surroundings and basically determined what the situation was. He had known that it was extremely dangerous inside, so it was normal for such an outcome. Now, his attention was more on the two unfamiliar men. Those two are, Nan Yifan came back to his senses and said, "Oh, I almost forgot to introduce them to you. These two are Patriarch Yi Zhao and Elder Yi Yu of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan." Luo Yen was shocked. He had already guessed that these two might be important figures in the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, but he didn't expect that Yi Zhao, the Patriarch, would also come. Suddenly, he thought of something. Perhaps they came for the contracted Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix in Shangguanyu? Luo Yen suppressed the many thoughts in his heart and bowed politely. Yi Zhao frowned slightly. These people had all come out, but why wasn't there any movement from Dumpling and the rest? Seeing that Yi Zhao didn't pay much attention to him, Luo Yen wasn't angry. The other party was famous for his arrogance, so it was normal for him to have such an attitude. Besides, from the looks of it, he should still be waiting for the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix to come out, right? In fact, everyone present had such doubts in their hearts. Since both sides went in together, why was it that only Nan Yi and the rest came out, but the other party didn't come out at all? This made people think more about it. Nan Yifan thought for a moment and said, "Do you think Shangguanyu and the rest will still come out?" He hated the other party to the bone and couldn't wait to end their lives with his own hands. Nan Yi paused and sneered. Who knows? Maybe they've already died in there. Chichi. Two figures appeared almost at the same time. Nan Yi looked over and her heart sank. These two people were actually Nan Suhuai and Chu Ning. What was even more shocking was that other than a few sporadic wounds on their bodies, they were actually fine. From their expressions and state, it was obvious that they weren't injured much. Nan Yifan originally wanted to surround them immediately, but after seeing Nan Suhuai, he was stunned. Why was the dean of Lingxiao College here? At the same time, Nan Suhuai also noticed the strange atmosphere around him and looked over. Nan Yifan? He had actually brought people over? No, The point was that Nan Yi and the rest seemed to have come out before them. Looking around, Nan Suhui didn't see the person he wanted to see and couldn't help but feel disappointed and worried. Suddenly, his expression changed. Clan leader Zhao? Why are you here? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1713. Nan Yi suddenly snorted. He actually had the cheek to ask this question? President Nan, don't you know what your precious disciple has done? She must be tired of living to contract a crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Nan Suhui was stunned. He guessed what Nan Yi was referring to, but wasn't this matter already resolved before? Rong Xiu had clearly sent a letter saying that you had brought Dumpling out of Phoenix God Mountain safely. He had always thought that this matter had been satisfactorily resolved. Could it be that he had guessed wrongly? Yi Zhao said lightly. I'm indeed here to look for Shangguan Yu and Dumpling. Nan Suhuai's heart sank. What exactly was going on? If they didn't reach a satisfactory conclusion, Yi Zhao would never let them go and even allowed them to leave with Dumpling. Why did he suddenly? Nan Suhui took a closer look at him. Yi Zhao's expression was calm and nothing could be seen. For a moment he was a little nervous. If Yi Zhao was really here to cause trouble for them, then, Elder Yu's gaze landed on Chu Ning and he was a little surprised. Nan Suhui frowned. Elder Yu's lips curled into a smile before he shifted his gaze away. This man must be the person Shangguan Yu was looking for in the god-slaying tomb this time. According to what Nan Yi said, Shangguan Yu called him Daddy, so they must be father and daughter. He was just a stage 1 warrior, but he had a god realm. If he guessed correctly, he most likely had an indestructible divine body. Shangguan Yu was already surprising enough, but he didn't expect her father to be just as extraordinary. This family was really. Nan Suhui heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Elder Yu had no intention of causing trouble for them. He turned to look at Chu Ning, only to find that the latter looked calm as if she didn't take this matter to heart. Nan Suhui couldn't help but lean closer and ask in a low voice. Chu Ning, are you really not worried at all? Chu Ning was stunned. Worried? What are you worried about? Nan Suhui choked and shifted his gaze away. Those two are the clan leader and the 5th elder of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Chu Ning nodded. I know. And then? Then? What was the point of asking then? Nan Suhui almost couldn't breathe. Did Chu Ning not know how big of a trouble it was for Yuthra to contract a Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix in private? Dumpling. Chu Ning blinked. Looking at Nan Suhui's nervous expression, she suddenly understood something. Nan, do you still not know? Boom. Before he could finish speaking, the sound of an intense collision of energies suddenly rang out. Everyone turned around and saw 2 figures, one in front and one behind, rushing out from the black wall. However, the person in front of him was illusory and translucent. It was actually just a soul. The person behind him was tall and sturdy. His face was piercingly cold, and his soul conduit realm battle intent surged. It was Shangguan Jing. From the looks of it, the two of them seemed to be fighting. Moreover, it was obvious that Shangguan Jing had the upper hand. That soul's aura was chaotic, and it was obvious that he couldn't hold on much longer. This scene shocked everyone present. Why did another soul suddenly appear? Senior. Nan Yi's eyes widened and she couldn't help but blurt out. Nan Yifun immediately looked at her. You know that person? Nan Yi felt that she had said something wrong. At first, she thought that she was the only one who came out, so she skipped to the part where she met Yu Hongshan, who knew that the two of them were actually still alive, and they were fighting from inside to outside. At this moment, Yu Hongshan, who was in a sorry state, also saw Nan Yi. Help me! He didn't even think about it before he shouted in a deep voice. Shangguan Jing was indeed powerful. Even though he had been cultivating hard for the past 1,000 years, he was still slightly inferior when it came to fighting. If this continued, he would definitely die in Shangguan Jing's hands today. Nan Yi gritted her teeth. Father, this senior helped me before. Let's help him now? It would be great if they could get rid of Shangguan Jing at the same time. When Nan Yifun heard this, He nodded without any hesitation. However, he had just taken a step when a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was Nan Suhuai. He said with a faint smile. Master Nan, are you going to attack Senior Shangguanjing? Nan Yifan sneered. But is Dean Nan planning to stop me? Senior Shangguanjing is Yu's ancestor and is also a distinguished guest of our Lingxiao College. If he's in danger, there's no reason for us to sit back and do nothing. Although Nan Suhuai was smiling, his eyes were very determined. Nan Yifan slowly clenched his fists. Dean Nan, are you really going to go against us for Shangguanjing? Nan Suhuai shrugged with a smile. Didn't your people already do that previously? Don't you think it's ridiculous to ask me this question now? His gaze landed on Nan Yi meaningfully. If it weren't for your daughter provoking us time and time again and finding trouble with us, things wouldn't have developed to this extent. We haven't gone to find trouble with you yet, but you're planning to make a move on us first? Shangguanjing was Yu's Taizu, so they naturally had to protect him. Nan Yifan sneered when he heard this. It's clearly Shangguanyu's fault, but now Dean Nan wants to falsely accuse her? You want to push all the blame onto my daughter? Nan Suhuai raised his eyebrows. He already knew how Nan Yi explained to these people after she came out. Oh. Nan Suhuai asked with interest. Nan Yi said that it's all Yu's fault? She didn't need to say it. Anyone with a discerning eye can tell what's going on. There seemed to be magma surging wildly in Nan Yifan's chest, as if it would rush out in the next moment. Nan Yuxing was crippled, Elder Bai Tong was dead, and Nan Yi and Elder Wu Peng were seriously injured. This time, they could be said to have suffered heavy losses. Nan Yifan had a belly full of anger and didn't know where to vent it. But Nan Suhuai seemed indifferent to his agitated emotions. He smiled. Of course, Nan Yi would gloss over everything and describe everything in a way that was beneficial to her. And Nan Yifan doted on her so much, so he naturally believed her without a doubt. If there was no solid evidence, it was useless no matter how much others said. Seeing that Nan Suhuai didn't speak, Nan Yifan thought that he was guilty and sneered. Why, Dean Nan doesn't intend to continue. If you really have the confidence, why don't you confront me on the spot? Nan Suhuai narrowed his eyes slightly. Confront? He was probably going to pester endlessly. Nan Yifan was even more certain of his guess. He raised his chin slightly and said coldly, If you don't dare to confront me, please step aside immediately. Just as he finished speaking, a clear and cold voice, like the sound of jade striking stone, suddenly sounded. I will confront you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1714. The voice was cold and calm, but it also carried a powerful pressure that made people dare not defy it. Everyone present could not help but look in the direction of the voice. On the black wall, the power around the huge totem suddenly surged. The void rippled with it. Then, a tall and slender figure walked out from it. The person who came was handsome and elegant. He was dressed in a snow-white robe, and he looked elegant. In an instant, everything in the surroundings seemed to dim in color. All the spiritual aura in the world seemed to converge on this one person. Everyone was silent for a moment. The man raised his eyes slightly, and a pair of eyes that were as deep as the sea quietly looked at the crowd. It was a very light look, but it was so dense that no one dared to look at it directly. When he first appeared, everyone thought he was like an immortal. But when they saw this pair of eyes, they were shocked to realize it was an illusion. Everything that happened before was just an illusion. This was not an immortal who flew down from the 9 mysterious heavens, but a devil who stepped on fire from hell. However, such a feeling was fleeting. Rong Xiu's eyes moved slightly, and that thick layer of bloody killing intent quietly dissipated. When they looked at him again, that pair of phoenix eyes had returned to their usual gentle, elegant, indifferent, and distant look. Rong Xiu. Seeing the person who came, Nan Suhuai and Chu Ning were the first to react, and they both looked happy. Previously, they were still worried that he would not be able to come out safely. Now that they saw that he was safe and sound, and even his clothes were as spotless as usual, they immediately relaxed. He nodded slightly at Nan Su Huai and Chu Ning, indicating that he was fine. Then he raised his eyes slightly and looked at Shengguan Jing and Yu Hongshan. Since he came out, the two of them had temporarily stopped fighting. Sensing Rong Xiu's cold gaze on him, Yu Hongshan's heart skipped a beat. Danger. Even Shengguan Jing did not cause such a strong sense of danger to him. Yu Hongshan's mind raced. This man called Rong Xiu looked to be in his early 20s. But his strength was unfathomable. Even he couldn't detect it. More importantly, out of so many people, only Rong Xiu came out unscathed. This made Yu Hongshan vigilant. Senior Shengguan, is this the person you mentioned before who betrayed you? Rong Xiu asked calmly. Shengguan Jing came back to his senses and nodded. He vaguely felt that there was something different about Rong Xiu, but he couldn't tell what it was. Rong Xiu nodded. Please do as you wish. He didn't expect this person to still be alive. However, this was also good. Shengguan Jing would be able to deal with him personally to take revenge for what happened back then. Don't worry, no one here will interfere with your matter. You can do whatever you want with him. Rong Xiu said calmly. Shengguan Jing's heart stirred slightly. He finally knew what was wrong. When Rong Xiu said these words, he was using a declarative sentence. His tone was too matter-of-fact, as if he didn't care about the objections of others at all. To put it bluntly, Rong Xiu's words were actually for everyone present to hear. This was an order. Shengguan Jing was secretly shocked. He knew that Rong Xiu had a noble status and had always been high and mighty. But apart from him, the head of the Nan family, Nan Yifan, was also here today. The Nan family's status was higher than Yuntian Towers. If he said this, Nan Yifan, Shengguan Jing subconsciously looked at Nan Yifan and was suddenly stunned. Why did Nan Yifan's reaction seem a little off? Nan Yi had also noticed this. After seeing Rong Xiu appear, her emotions were very complicated. Although all the previous twists and turns had already worn away most of her liking for Rong Xiu, it was very difficult for her to completely oppose Rong Xiu. But Rong Xiu obviously didn't take her seriously and even came out to confront her. It would be a lie to say that Nan Yi didn't feel upset. At the same time, she was also angry. Hence, she finally decided to ask her father for help, Nan Yifan. Rong Xiu and the rest were extremely rude to her previously. Now that her father was here, let's see how they could still be arrogant? However, Nan Yifan didn't respond even after Nan Yi shouted twice. Father? Father? She frowned strangely and tugged at Nan Yifan's sleeve. Only then did Nan Yifan come back to his senses and look at her with a stiff expression. What's wrong? Nan Yi frowned even more. What's wrong? Wasn't the situation already right in front of her? Father, are you all right? Nan Yi asked nervously. He had always been high-spirited and she rarely saw him with such an expression. Why didn't you mention it before? Nan Yifan didn't finish speaking, but Nan Yi already understood. Was he talking about Rong Xiu? Nan Yi was about to defend herself when she suddenly remembered what Rong Xiu had said previously. Wait a minute. From the looks of it, her father and Rong Xiu really knew each other. Patriarch Nan, long time no see. Rong Xiu looked at Nan Yifan and said indifferently. Nan Yifan's expression instantly became subtle. His jaw tightened and he squeezed out an extremely stiff smile. A long time no see. Successor. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere in the field instantly became even more strange. Almost everyone looked at Nan Yifan with a strange look in their eyes. Especially the people from the Nan family. When they heard Nan Yifan call out the words, successor, so politely, it was as if they had seen a ghost. He was the patriarch of the Nan family. Whether it was status, experience, or strength, he was much higher than Rong Xiu. Why did it seem like he was the one who was more nervous and perturbed now? Nan Yi widened her eyes. Father! She knew her father too well. He would never be so polite to someone for no reason. In fact, there was even a hint of reverence and fear. Although Nan Yifan hid his emotions very well, Nan Yi, who was standing beside him, saw everything. Nan Yifan looked at her sternly. This girl actually skipped over such an important matter. If he had known that Rong Xiu was also involved, Nan Yi's heart turned cold from his gaze. No wonder Rong Xiu directly guessed their identity and was so disdainful. They originally thought that he was pretending, but now, they were afraid that wasn't the case. But why did her father have to be so polite to a mere successor of Yuntian Tower? Nan Yi's heart was in turmoil. When she thought of the things that had happened before, she felt terrible. Nan Yifan couldn't be bothered with her as he forced a smile and cupped his hands at Rong Xiu. I didn't expect the successor to be here too. What a coincidence, what a coincidence. Rong Xiu's eyes were cold and his voice was indifferent. The Shangguan Yu that you said you wanted to teach a lesson to is the mistress of Yuntian Tower, I's princess consort. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1715. Nan Yifan's mind buzzed. It was as if an invisible hammer had smashed him on the head, causing him to freeze on the spot. The matriarch of Yuntian Tower. That's right. He finally remembered why the name Shangguan Yu sounded familiar. Wasn't that the princess whom Rong Xiu had personally appointed? This matter had spread like wildfire among the many aristocratic families in the Divine Ruins. However, the Nan family had never cared much about these things, and their subordinates would never mention it in front of him. He had only found out about it after inquiring about it in private. However, this matter had passed for a long time, and almost no one around him had mentioned it. Over time, he had forgotten about it. That was why he didn't think of it when he heard the name Shangguan Yu. Miscalculation. What a miscalculation. At this moment, Nan Yifan was so regretful that his intestines turned green. That was Rong Xiu's woman. Why did he have to take things so hard that he threatened to cause trouble for her? He even brought so many people from the Nan family to fall out with them? Look at these people. Among them, there was the father of Shangguan Yu, the master of Shangguan Yu, and the Taizu of Shanghai Yu. Offending them was undoubtedly offending Shangguan Yu. Wasn't that the same as offending Rong Xiu? Nan Yifan finally couldn't laugh anymore. This time, even his stiff fake smile became very forced. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty and spat out a few words with great difficulty. Misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Hey, didn't second Miss Nan just say that they were reduced to such a miserable state because of that B***kiss in Shangguan Yu? In the almost suffocating silence, Elder Yu suddenly spoke. He blinked. Just now, the head of the Nan family seemed to have said that he wanted to avenge them. How did it suddenly become a misunderstanding? Yi Zhao glanced at him. After so many years, his bad habit of watching a show had not changed. However, this time, he was happy to watch the show. As soon as Elder Yu spoke, Nan Yifan had a bad premonition. After listening to him, he could only gnash his teeth in hatred. Why did this Yu just have to come out and stir up trouble at this time? If he didn't do it on purpose, then he must have seen a ghost. However, he could no longer be bothered to question Elder Yu. Instead, he immediately looked up at Rong Xiu. No, it's not like that. Meeting Rong Xiu's eyes, Nan Yifan's voice suddenly stopped. He felt as if his throat was being strangled by an invisible hand. The rest of his words were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say anything. That deep and cold gaze fell on her, chilling her to the bone. Rong Xiu's voice was light as he looked at Nan Yi. Is what Elder Yu said true? Nan Yi felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She had never felt so clearly that she was only one step away from death. A terrifying pressure instantly enveloped her. It almost made her unable to breathe. Nan Yifan hurriedly took a step forward and stood in front of Nan Yi as he hurriedly explained. Successor. It's not like that. He didn't say that. So, Elder Yu was lying in public and deceiving I? Rong Xiu's question made Nan Yifan speechless. Elder Yu crossed his arms and raised his chin. Patriarch Nan, aren't you being too mean by saying that? To think that I've been speaking up for you in front of the Patriarch. Is this how you repay me? Nan Yifan wanted to tear his mouth apart. Who was the one being mean? Wasn't he the one who came out to stir up trouble first? And he even said that he spoke up for him in front of Yi Zhao? He didn't hear any of that. He only heard that he exposed Yi in public and put all of them in danger. Nan Yifan took a deep breath and forced himself to ignore Elder Yu. There are indeed many misunderstandings in today's matter. I can personally explain from the beginning. Father, he's just the successor of Yuntian Tower. Why do you have to be so polite? A voice full of unwillingness and anger suddenly sounded. It was Nan Yuxing. Everything was fine at first, but ever since Rong Xiu appeared, everything seemed to have suddenly changed. He really didn't understand why his father was so polite to Rong Xiu. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was in awe and fear. If it was any other time, Nan Yuxing would never ask this question. Anyone with a brain could see that there was something wrong with Nan Yifan's attitude towards Rong Xiu. However, Nan Yuxing had already lost his mind. He was seriously injured and his mind was already a little muddled. When he saw this scene, he was instantly furious and burned the last string of reason in his heart. Thus, he suddenly shouted this sentence in a crazy manner. Yuxing. Nan Yifan was also stunned, and then endless anger surged in his heart. This unfilial son, does he know what he's saying? The situation was already difficult enough for him, and now that Nan Yuxing had interfered, the situation became even worse. Nan Yifan suddenly raised his hand and shouted sternly. Come and apologize to the successor immediately. His words didn't serve as a warning to Nan Yuxing. Instead, it made him even crazier. Previously, when he was facing Rong Xiu, his attitude had always been high and mighty. Even if he wasn't a match for Rong Xiu, he actually didn't take Rong Xiu seriously. How could Yuntian Tower be compared to the Nan family? However, now Nan Yifan was asking him to bow down to Rong Xiu? He would never agree. He's not worthy. Nan Yuxing straightened his neck and shouted. Slap. A loud and clear sound of a slap suddenly rang out. It was Nan Yifan who gave him a hard slap across the air. Nan Yuxing's voice instantly disappeared. His cheek was slapped to one side, and it quickly became red and swollen. Nan Yifan was so angry that his chest violently rose and fell, and his palm was still trembling slightly. Eldest young master. The elders standing at the side were also stunned when they saw the situation. They only came back to their senses when they saw blood seeping out from the corner of Nan Yuxing's mouth. Just as they were about to go over to help Nan Yuxing, they heard Nan Yifan shout again. No one is allowed to help him. His voice was stern, and the two elders didn't dare to disobey. They could only stand there awkwardly and let Nan Yuxing's body sway and fall to the ground. Nan Yuxing was already seriously injured, and Nan Yifan had used a lot of strength in this slap. It wasn't something that he could withstand. Almost everyone didn't understand why Nan Yifan's attitude had taken a 180-degree turn. However, they weren't stupid. They knew that there must be an unknown reason, so they all tactfully kept their mouths shut. Nan Yifan closed his eyes, then looked at Rong Xiu. Successor, my son offended you just now. Please forgive him. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Just because of this slap? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1716. It was obvious what he meant. Not enough. Nan Yifan clenched his fists. He knew that Rong Xiu wasn't someone to be trifled with and that it wouldn't be easy to get past him. Hence, he purposely gave Nan Yuxing a tight slap. However, Rong Xiu did not appreciate it. He clenched his teeth and walked over to Nan Yuxing without saying a word. He dragged him up and gave him another slap. This time, it was a slap to the face. Before Nan Yuxing could react, there was a loud noise in his head and a sharp pain came. Bang! He fell to the ground again and spat out a mouthful of blood. This time, Nan Yuxing was so dizzy that he almost fainted. Nan Yifan paused. Rong Xiu did not say a word. He took a deep breath and gave Nan Yuxing a few more slaps. Nan Yuxing could not say a word this time. After spitting out a few mouthfuls of blood, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. Nan Yifan closed his eyes. How could he not feel distressed and upset? However, at this moment, he could not think of any other way to solve the problem. At this point, Rong Xiu finally spoke. Why do you have to do this, Nan family head? I am not a narrow-minded person. Why would I care about what he said? Nan Yifan spat out a mouthful of blood. You don't care? If you don't care, why didn't you say anything earlier? You only spoke when Nan Yuxing fainted. However, he could not say these words directly. Nan Yifan threw Nan Yuxing to the ground. He spoke rudely to the saint and should be taught a lesson. Speaking of which, it's my fault for not teaching my son well. I'm really ashamed. When Nan Yifan said this, there was a hint of anger on his face. It was as if he wanted to kick Nan Yuxing a few more times. Rong Xiu looked at Nan Yuxing, who was lying on the ground, and his thin red lips curled up slightly. No matter what, Nan Yuxing is the only son of the Nan family head. Now that his core of essence has been shattered and he has become a cripple, how can he bear the punishment of the Nan family head? As he spoke, he raised his chin. Elders, please treat him as soon as possible. Every word was like a steel knife, ruthlessly stabbing into Nan Yifan's heart. His face paled, but in the end he waved his hand. The two elders standing at the side hurriedly stepped forward. It wasn't easy for Nan Yuxing's condition to take a turn for the better. With these few slaps, all of his previous efforts had been wasted. It was even worse than the beginning. Nan Yifan then turned around and looked at Rong Xiu. His expression was extremely restrained. Saint, there were many misunderstandings in the past. However, I have already taught them a harsh lesson. Do you think we can let this matter pass? Anyone could tell that Nan Yifan was begging for mercy. Elder Yu couldn't help but chuckle and whisper, interesting. Although Yuntian Tower was a first-class aristocratic family, it was still slightly inferior to the Nan family. It was reasonable to say that when Rong Xiu and Nan Yifan went up against each other, Rong Xiu should be the one at a disadvantage. However, the truth was exactly the opposite. They really didn't know what Nan Yifan was afraid of. Or had they underestimated Rong Xiu before? Yizhao put his hands behind his back and narrowed his eyes slightly. However, he didn't say anything. In fact, he was also thinking about this problem in his heart. Perhaps, their understanding of Rong Xiu was really far from enough. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he had heard something funny. Then he said slowly, "You're right. Patriarch Nan, did you think wrongly? From the beginning to the end, I was blaming Nan Yi, not him." He said the last few words very slowly and clearly, one word at a time. Nan Yifan's expression suddenly changed. Rong Xiu was playing with him. However, before he could explode, Rong Xiu continued. You provoked her time and time again, but you, was magnanimous and didn't take it to heart. Unfortunately, you don't know what it means to quit when you're ahead. Not only do you not have the slightest bit of remorse, but you're even slandering and humiliating her in public now. Rong Xiu spoke very slowly. His voice was light, but there was a hint of coldness in it. Nanny only felt that these words were like a sharp and cold knife against her neck. Back and forth, just waiting for the most suitable time to cut down ruthlessly. She trembled all over and her legs went weak unconsciously. She subconsciously looked at Nan Yifan. Dead. Rong Xiu wanted to kill her. He was determined to kill her. How could Nan Yifan feel good? He had already gone all out just now and almost lost half of Nan Yuxing's life, but he didn't expect that Rong Xiu still wouldn't let it go. After hesitating for a long time, Nan Yifan said with difficulty, "What exactly does the saint want?" Rong Xiu must have seen through all his tricks at a glance. It was obvious that Rong Xiu didn't care about those things at all. He would only stop when he was truly satisfied. So, Nan Yifan simply chose to ask directly. Rong Xiu laughed. Patriarch Nan is straightforward enough. Then I won't beat around the bush. He raised his chin slightly and glanced at Nan Yi coldly. I want her tongue. His voice was low and his tone was extremely light, but it was not to be disobeyed. This wasn't a compromise or a discussion, but an order. Nan Yifan felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his chest. He knew that Rong Xiu had always been ruthless and merciless. Today, their people had offended him ruthlessly, so he would definitely take revenge. But this request was really too much. He only had this one daughter and had always regarded her as the apple of his eye. Usually, he would coax her for a long time and dote on her very much. Now that Rong Xiu wanted to cut off her tongue, Nan Yifan couldn't accept it no matter what. Nan Yi clutched his sleeves tightly. Her eyes were red and bean-sized tears kept falling. "Father, don't be like this." She had clearly seen her elder brother's miserable state just now. At this moment, she completely understood that her father was indeed extremely afraid of Rong Xiu. If her father really agreed to this request, hot tears fell on the back of Nan Yifan's hand. He closed his eyes and held Nan Yi's hand. "I don't agree to this condition." He could accept other punishments, but he was definitely not willing to sacrifice his bloodline. Just now, he seemed to be extremely ruthless towards Nan Yuxing, but in fact, he had been controlling his strength and skills, so he didn't cause any fatal injuries. But if he handed Nan Yi to Rong Xiu to deal with, the consequences, he didn't even dare to think about it. Rong Xiu didn't look surprised, as if he had already expected this. The corners of his lips seemed to be smiling as he said lightly, "Patriarch Nan, I've already given you face." Unfortunately, he didn't want it. Nan Yifan immediately tensed up. Sensing his nervousness, Nan Yi had a bad feeling. Suddenly, she had an idea and shouted at Yi Zhao and Elder Yu in a sharp voice. "Patriarch Yi Zhao, that Shangguan Yu privately contracted the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix, which is a heinous crime. Rong Xiu is also wrong for trying to cover it up. Are you really going to sit back and do nothing?" Digression, it's the last 3 days, please vote. Every extra vote can be added to the explosive update on the 11th of next month. Xiaoxiang and QQ Reading have super surprise New Year's Day activities respectively, and they have already pinned the comments section to welcome everyone to participate. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1717. When Elder Yu heard this, he almost laughed out loud. Nan Yi was really crazy. She was about to die, but she still dared to say such things? She was afraid that she wouldn't die completely. Based on the current situation, the Nan family was completely at a disadvantage. Nan Yi was undoubtedly treating them as her last straw, and she was still hoping that they would help her. Even if they were really here to cause trouble for Shangguan Yu, what did it have to do with her? They couldn't be bothered if Rong Xiu wanted to cut off her tongue. Yi Zhao frowned slightly, and a trace of impatience finally appeared on his face. Nan Yi thought that she had persuaded the other party and was secretly delighted. Then she heard Rong Xiu laugh and ask, "Clan leader Yi Zhao, do you want to help them?" Yi Zhao spat out coldly. "What does their life and death have to do with me?" The reason why he was impatient was purely because he felt that it was too noisy after hearing Nan Yi talk about this over and over again. Rong Xiu nodded, and a smile appeared on his lips. "Thank you for your understanding, clan leader Yi Zhao." The two of them had only exchanged a few words and had already finalized the result. One couldn't be bothered, while the other was determined to kill. Nan Yi felt like she had fallen into an ice cave. She never expected that the other party would be so indifferent. Nan Yi was almost crazy after being forced into a desperate situation. She shouted at the top of her lungs. "Clan leader Yi Zhao, do you really not mind at all that Shangguan Yu contracted the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix privately? Even if the bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan is tarnished, you don't care at all." Yi Zhao's eyes turned cold. He was about to speak when he suddenly sensed something and looked up. The sound of tides surging could be heard. Everyone looked over and realized that the energy of heaven and earth around the black wall was surging rapidly into the huge and mysterious totem. It was daytime now, and the originally clear sky quickly became gloomy. Dark clouds gathered, stacking on top of each other. The sky was covered by thick clouds, and everything between heaven and earth seemed to be shrouded in a layer of shadow. Only the totem on the black wall shone brighter and brighter. Then, with the totem as the center, the blackness on the wall suddenly began to fade away. The originally thick and mottled stones gradually became transparent, glowing with a sparkling and translucent luster. As for the totem, it finally began to show its original brilliant colors. Everyone was deeply shocked by this scene. For a moment, their minds were shaken, and they didn't know how to react. This wall had endured the baptism of tens of thousands of years in the god-slaying mound, but it still stood proudly. It was always deep and heavy. Every stone piled on top of it was deeply engraved with everything that had happened here. They were solemn, ancient, and untouchable. However, at this moment, their appearances had completely changed. Everyone could even see the mottled traces left behind on the surface, but only the thick black color was gone. Gradually, a slender and straight figure appeared behind the totem. Chu Ning's eyes suddenly lit up, and he unconsciously took a step forward. The woman in red sitting cross-legged was none other than Yu. At this moment, she was sitting cross-legged quietly, staring intently at a transparent page in her hand. Her black hair hung down, and her side profile was beautiful and calm. Her body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of indescribable unique aura, which easily isolated all the hustle and bustle around her. From everyone's point of view, Chu Luiwei seemed to be trapped in a huge transparent space. They could see her every move, but there was a wall in the middle, which was far away and untouchable. Silence reigned in the field. Suddenly, Chu Luiwei tilted her head slightly and looked over. Her eyes were calm, but they also seemed to contain a myriad of stars, clear and bright. Immediately, she frowned slightly and said lightly, "It's so noisy." Almost at the same time, a childish voice was heard. "It's so noisy." Everyone was shocked. Only then did they see that not far away from Chu Luiwei, there was a little girl with her hands on her waist, looking over angrily. She looked to be no more than 3 or 4 years old. She was wearing a reddish-gold lotus leaf dress, and her hair was tied up in 2 buns with a red string and a golden bell. Her chubby, white and tender little face was as cute as snow. It was Dumpling. At this moment, her big black grape-like eyes were burning with anger. Hot and anxious. That was real fire. "It's so noisy." Dumpling was really angry. Ever since she was swallowed into this strange space, she had been looking for traces of Ayu. After searching back and forth for a long time, she was finally pushed here by a strong force not long ago, and only then did she see Ayu. When she saw Ayu, she wanted to pounce on her. But she soon realized that Ayu seemed to be busy with something. So, she waited obediently at the side. In the end, not long after, the originally dark space gradually brightened. Then she heard a lot of noise. Especially that sharp and ear-piercing female voice, which annoyed Dumpling to death. Now, she was disturbing Ayu. She would never tolerate it anymore. "I've said it before." She raised her hand and pointed at Nanny. Really annoying." Seeing Dumpling appear and criticize her directly, Nan-yi panicked for a moment. But she quickly calmed down. What was there to worry about? The more this crimson gold heavenly phoenix protected Shangguanyu, the angrier clan leader Yi Zhao and the rest would be. How could the noble crimson gold heavenly phoenixes tolerate their own kind contracting with a human? Moreover, they were so loyal and sincere. This time, she didn't believe that Yi Zhao and the rest could tolerate it. She sneered, turned her head and said, "Clan leader Yi Zhao, did you see that? Not only did Shangguanyu contract with your own kind, but she also ordered her around and completely treated her as her slave. Can you really take this lying down?" She thought that Yi Zhao would definitely fly into a rage after seeing this scene and hearing these words. However, Yi Zhao's reaction was completely out of Nan-yi's expectations. He stared intently at Dumpling, who was inside the wall. After confirming that she was safe and sound, he heaved a long sigh of relief. Then he turned to look at Nanny. Meeting those cold and dignified eyes, Nanny suddenly felt a surge of uneasiness. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Yi Zhao's brows moved slightly, and he said calmly and dignified. "Dumpling is Shangguanyu's contracted beast. Isn't it normal to speak up for her? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 17-18. Nan-yi widened her eyes in disbelief. Nan Yifan and the rest also quickly turned around and looked at Yi Zhao, almost suspecting that they were hallucinating. What did Yi Zhao just say? Very normal. He actually felt that this matter was very normal. Could it be that he's crazy? In an instant, Nan Yi felt that the world was in chaos. Yi Zhao. He was famous in the Divine Ruins world. Almost everyone knew how much he hated and was indifferent to the human race. But now, his own clan had formed a contract with the human race, and he actually didn't care? All the words that Nan Yi had prepared were suddenly stuck in her throat, and she couldn't say anything else. She pinched herself hard and relied on this pain to confirm that she wasn't dreaming. And those words were indeed spat out by Yi Zhao. What do you mean? Nan Yi stuttered. At this moment, she had already sensed that things seemed to be different from what she had expected. She wanted to try to salvage the situation, but everything seemed to be sliding in a direction that she couldn't control. Yi Zhao said indifferently, "It's literally what I said." He actually didn't care about this matter at all. Nan Yi felt as if her heart was being gripped tightly by something. Even breathing had become difficult for him. But in that case, then, isn't that Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix equivalent to betraying the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan? Could it be that you also, second Miss Nan, are you kidding? Elder EU interrupted her with a grin. Dumpling is the young master appointed by our ancestors and the next clan leader of our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Anyone can betray our clan, but she is the only one who can't. His indifferent words were tantamount to a heavy hammer that smashed fiercely into Nanny's heart. Her mind buzzed and instantly went blank. Young master. That Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix was actually the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. And it was appointed by their ancestors. Then, she said so much just now, wasn't it all a joke in their eyes? Nanny's vision turned black and she fell to the ground. Second miss. An elder was standing by the side. Seeing this, he hurriedly went forward and supported Nanny. Second miss, are you all right? Nanny's legs went weak and she almost couldn't stand steadily. Her body was cold and her mind was in a mess. At this moment, she really wished that she would just faint. Everything that happened just now kept replaying in her mind, making her feel extremely embarrassed. She wished she could find a hole to hide in and never appear in front of these people again. To think that she had thought that by saying so much, she would be able to stir up a conflict between Yi Zhao and Shangguanyu. She had thought that she would be able to use this opportunity to destroy Shanghai Yu once and for all. Who would have thought Yi Zhao and the others had been standing on the same side as Shangguanyu from the very beginning? From the beginning to the end, she was the only one. A clown. What a joke. Nan Yi was trembling all over. Her face was pale and she looked miserable. Where was the dignity and arrogance of the second miss of the Nan family? Nan Yifan was also stunned by this sudden turn of events. He stood there for a long time without moving. He didn't know what to say or do. When Nan Yi said those words, he had a laissez-faire attitude. Although he didn't show his emotions on his face like Nan Yi, didn't he have the same thoughts as Nan Yi in his heart? At this moment he couldn't be bothered to help Nan Yi, because he himself was panicking. Young master, the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. He couldn't help but turn around. If he hadn't heard it with his own ears, who would believe that such a little girl was actually the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan? Countless thoughts flashed through Nan Yifan's mind. Before this, he had never heard of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan having a young master in the Divine Ruins world. Then this matter was very likely to have happened recently. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan did seem to have held an ancestral worship ceremony some time ago. If he didn't guess wrongly, it should be at that time, but this Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix was Shangguanyu's contracted magical beast. How did she sit on the position of young master? Logically speaking, such an identity was a stain on the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. It was already good enough that she didn't become a sinner. How did she ascend to become the young master? Nan Yifan was extremely shocked and puzzled. But he didn't even have the qualifications or courage to ask this question. Earlier, Elder Yu had clearly said that the position of young master was personally appointed by their ancestor. He couldn't even afford to offend Yi Zhao, So how could he dare to question the ancestors of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan? No wonder Yi Zhao, the clan leader, had personally made a move. How could he not be worried that something had happened to the young master? Previously, he felt that Yi Zhao and Nan Yifan were very concerned about the person they were looking for. But he never expected that the true identity of that little girl would be so shocking. Everything had become a hopeless situation. Yi Zhao looked coldly at Nan. I forgot to say that Dumpling is a rare genius in our clan. She has the most noble bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, the purest bloodline. Saying that she had tarnished the bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, was there anything more ridiculous than this? Nan Yi's eyes rolled back and she finally fainted. The elder at the side looked at Nan Yifan with a troubled expression. Patriarch, this. Nan Yifan clenched his fists tightly and almost gritted his teeth. He was no longer in the mood to care about Nan Yi's situation. Today, they had completely offended Rong Xiu and the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. It was still unknown what kind of storm the entire Nan family would suffer. Fainted? Rong Xiu asked lightly. It's fine. With a wave of his sleeve, a black figure suddenly appeared in front of everyone. It was a puppet made entirely of black fine iron. It was tall and wore a suit of armor that was tough and iron-blooded. Golden flames were burning where its originally empty eyes were originally. The hearts of everyone present shuddered. The combat power of this puppet was probably extremely strong. Although there were no fluctuations of origin power around his body, that terrifying pressure was extremely frightening. Rong Xiu's voice was indifferent. Sky Demon, pry open her mouth. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1719. Upon hearing this order, the puppet immediately bowed respectfully. Then, with a tap of its foot, it charged towards Nanti. He was extremely strong, and with just a stomp, several cracks appeared on the ground. As for his figure, he was already like an arrow that had left the bow, flying away at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, he was already not far from Nan Yi. The elder supporting Nan Yi was shocked and immediately set up a barrier in front of him while retreating at the same time. However, these defenses couldn't even withstand a single blow from the puppet. Boom! He punched out, and the barrier instantly shattered. Violent energy surged in all directions. Some of it collided with the Sky Demon, but it didn't even leave a mark. God puppet! Nan Yifan's expression also changed. He immediately rushed forward and tried to stop the Sky Demon. However, the Sky Demon's speed was not inferior to his at all. In fact, his movements were even more agile. In a flash, he bypassed him and rushed directly in front of Nanti. Origin power surged around the elder's body. But before he could make a move, the Sky Demon had already kicked his wrist. Crack! The sound of bones breaking was especially crisp. Ah! That elder cried out in pain and unconsciously loosened his grip. Nan Yi was instantly snatched away by the Sky Demon. Nan Yifan's heart sank. Yi! The Sky Demon ignored him and used his elbow to clamp down on Nan Yi's neck, while his other hand pinched her chin tightly. The intense pain woke Nan Yi up again. When she came back to her senses, she realized that she was tightly clamped down. Her chin seemed to have been dislocated, and the Sky Demon's strength was extremely ruthless. This directly shattered half of her jawbone. She was forced to open her mouth, and cold air continuously poured into her lungs, causing her to feel cold all over. She had a bad feeling and started to struggle frantically. However, the Sky Demon's combat strength was extremely strong. Even at her peak, she was no match for the Sky Demon, let alone now. Then, something flew over quickly. Sharp, boiling hot. Nan Yi felt her vision blur. Then, she heard something fall out and smash on the ground. Only then did the heavenly demon release her and return to Rong Xiu's side in a flash. Nan Yi's body suddenly loosened and she fell to the ground. Her hands seemed to be pressing down on something. She turned her head stiffly. A piece of tongue with dark red bloodstains was lying quietly on the ground. It was still warm. Nan Yi was shocked. Then, an indescribable and terrifying pain came from his mouth. The thick smell of blood instantly filled his mouth. Nan Yi widened her eyes in horror. Her tongue. That was her tongue. Rong Xiu had really cut off her tongue just now. Nan Yi let out a mournful cry as she sobbed. She wanted to say something, but all that came out of her mouth was a whimper. She couldn't say another word. Nan Yifan's face paled, his body swayed, and he almost fell. He had doted on Nan Yi since she was young. Now that he had to watch her tongue being cut off, how could he bear it? Blood kept flowing from the corners of Nan Yi's mouth and her face was filled with tears. She looked really miserable. The scene was dead silent. Other than her whimpering cries, there were no other sounds. Everyone was shocked by Rong Xiu's straightforward move. No one expected that Rong Xiu would actually do as he said. He said that he would cut off Nan Yi's tongue. Even if Nan Yifan and the rest stopped him, he would still do it. Rong Xiu was a little irritated by her mournful voice. He narrowed his eyes dangerously. If you continue to make noise, I have ways to shut you up forever. Nan Yi's voice stopped abruptly. Her blood surged, her chest and abdomen churned, and more blood flowed from the corners of her mouth. However, after being glanced at by Rong Xiu's deep and cold eyes, she didn't dare to make a sound. She had no doubt that Rong Xiu would definitely do this. Yi. Luo Yan walked over quickly. Nan Yi looked at him without saying a word, but tears kept falling. Luo Yan's heart ached when he saw her like this. He took out a pill and fed it to her. But Nan Yi's mouth was full of blood and she was in so much pain that she couldn't swallow the pill. The veins on Luo Yan's forehead bulged, but in the end he could only endure it. He wanted to take revenge on Rong Xiu. However, this matter wasn't so easy. Not to mention that Rong Xiu's strength had increased a lot. He still had many trump cards that he hadn't revealed yet. It was really difficult to do anything to him. Just the attitude of the family head was too much to think about. Nan Yi was his only daughter and he had doted on her for so many years. How could his heart not ache? But, until now, Nan Yifan hadn't done anything to Rong Xiu. Coupled with his abnormal attitude when facing Rong Xiu previously, one couldn't help but think more about it. Nan Yifan would never be so polite to someone for no reason, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he would swallow his anger. He seemed to be rather afraid of Rong Xiu. What was he afraid of? Luo Yan didn't know. However, he understood that the things that were involved in this matter had definitely exceeded their expectations. So much so that Nan Yifan could swallow his anger. Besides, even if they disregarded everything and fell out with Rong Xiu, then what about the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix? They were also on Shengguan Yu's side. In other words, all the grievances and pain today, Nan Yi had to bear it even if she didn't want to. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1720. Boom. Just as the situation reached a stalemate, the sound of an intense energy collision was heard. It was Shengguan Jing and Yu Hongshan fighting again. Yu Hongshan was already at a disadvantage. Now that he saw the Nan family suffer losses again and again, he had become the target of public criticism. He couldn't help but feel angry and anxious. He thought that by relying on Nan Yi and the Nan family, he still had some chance of winning today. Who knew that the remaining two parties were even more difficult to deal with? He didn't know what was so powerful about that Rong Xiu. But Nan Yifan's attitude was enough to explain many things. Besides, there was also Yi Zhao. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan clearly wanted to side with Shengguan Yu today. Shengguan Jing was a Taizu from Shengguan Yu, so they would naturally help. Now, he was already at the end of his rope. His psychological defense line collapsed, and Yu Hongshan's combat strength declined rapidly. Soon, he began to be defeated. Shengguan Jing took advantage of the opportunity to pursue him and beat him fiercely. He vented all the grudges of the past 1,000 years. Not long after, Yu Hongshan made a huge mistake, and Shengguan Jing seized the opportunity to give him a fatal blow. Bam! Yu Hongshan's translucent body finally exploded with this sound. Vanished into thin air. His soul was destroyed. Phew, Sheng Guanjing let out a long sigh. He didn't expect that Yu Hongshan had lived for more than 1,000 years in this black wall. But fortunately, all of this was finally over. The trace of unwillingness and anger that had accumulated in the depths of his heart finally dissipated with Yu Hongshan's complete death. For a moment, he was secretly glad that he had followed you or here this time. Otherwise, how would he have the chance to settle these old matters? Sheng Guanjing looked up at Chu Luiyue. Now, he only hoped that Yu could come out safely. Among those present, only the Nan family was suffering. Nan Yifan closed his eyes. The situation today was too unfavorable for them. They had no chance of winning if they forced it. The only thing they could do was to endure all of this. He walked to Nanny's side. When he saw Nanny's current state, his heart felt like it was being gripped tightly by something and it hurt terribly. However, even he had to admit that Nanny's fate today was, to a large extent, caused by herself. Of all people to offend, why did he have to offend Rong Xiu? If she had only angered Rong Xiu, he could still fight for her. However, her words had completely offended the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Nan Yifan was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he would never have let her come here. However, it was too late to say anything now. Let's go home. His voice was low and hoarse. Nan Yi looked at him with empty eyes. Disappointment? No, it was despair. She thought that her father would protect her. But no. Everything that had happened in the past seemed like a joke now. Now that she was being treated like this, he didn't even have the slightest intention of seeking justice for her. How could Nan Yifan not know what she was thinking? But he also had his difficulties. He couldn't possibly let the entire Nan family go against Rong Xiu and the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan for her, right? Moreover, she was clearly in the wrong this time. Even if word got out, they would be the ones in the wrong. Under such circumstances, what else could he do? Nan Yifan clenched his fists and his voice hardened. Luo Yen, take her back. Luo Yen closed his eyes and could only agree in the end. However, just as he was about to take Nan Yi away, Nan Yi suddenly started shaking her head frantically. Her face was full of rejection. Boo! She couldn't speak anymore. Every sound was like a heavy hammer that smashed into the hearts of everyone in the Nan family. She wasn't leaving. She definitely wasn't leaving. She wanted to stay here and see what Sheng Guanyu was up to. Anyway, she was already in this state. What difference did it make whether she left or stayed? Sensing her resentment, Luo Yen hesitated for a moment before turning to look at Nan Yifan. Patriarch, if you want to leave, you can leave directly. I'll stay here and accompany. Nan Yifan was so angry that he felt suffocated. Was Luo Yen venting his anger on him as well? Was he having a good time? Nan Yuxing's pill of the essence had shattered and he was completely crippled. Nan Yi's tongue had been cut off and she had become a mute. As her father, wasn't he the one who was the most heartbroken? He suppressed the anger in his heart. Okay, then we'll wait here together. We'll leave when she's willing to leave. The elders at the side wanted to comfort him, but the atmosphere was too cold and awkward. In the end, they chose to remain silent. No one cared whether they left or stayed. At this moment, Rong Xiu, Yi Zhao, and the rest's attention was already on Chu Luiyue and Dumpling. Everyone had come out, and only the two of them were still trapped inside. And for some reason, the black wall had started to become transparent, which made them feel even more uneasy. After a period of time, more than half of the black wall in front of everyone had faded. That strange totem had also revealed its original appearance. Mysterious and unfathomable, overflowing with light, majestic and awe-inspiring. Chu Luiyue's position was very subtle. Everyone looked from the outside and saw that she was right in the middle of the totem. She glanced at Nan Yi and retracted her gaze calmly, as if Nan Yi's life and death couldn't affect her at all. She threw away the paper in her hand. Her slender and delicate fingers moved gently, and another transparent paper flew over. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1721. What's that? Elder EU couldn't help but ask softly. In fact, he wasn't the only one. Everyone present was very curious about this question. Although they could see Chu Luiyue, they couldn't see where the paper went after she threw it away or where the new paper came from. The only thing they could see was that Chu Luiyue seemed to be very focused on studying these things. As for what was written on the transparent paper, no one knew. Yi Zhao didn't answer Elder EU's question. He just turned his gaze and glanced at Dumpling. Sensing his gaze, Dumpling opened her mouth and smiled brightly. Thank you, Grandpa Leader. She originally only felt that this place was very strange and was afraid that IU would encounter some danger that she couldn't handle. Thus, she tried to send a message for help. She didn't expect them to really come. Although Dumpling looked young, she had been by Chu Luiyue's side for many years and was very mature. It wasn't that she didn't know what it meant for Grandpa Leader to come personally. Thus, she was very touched and grateful. Therefore, she was not stingy with her big smile. Seeing the bright smile on Dumpling's cute little face, Yi Zhao's heart suddenly felt as if it had been hit by something. It was very tender and loving. His expression didn't change much and was still very dignified. Didn't I tell you before that if you encounter any danger, just say it? You're the young master. The clan will naturally do its best to save you. Elder EU stood at the side and glanced at him lightly. TSK. He clearly wanted to take the opportunity to improve his relationship with Dumpling, but he still said so much nonsense. Even if Dumpling wasn't the young master, he had to come personally. Of course, he definitely couldn't say this in front of him. He had to leave some face and dignity for the clan leader, right? Thus, Elder EU took a step forward with a smile and said, Dumpling, don't worry. Grandpa Fifth Elder is waiting for you here. Dumpling nodded vigorously and clenched her little fists. Grandpa Fifth Elder, wait for me. Elder EU was very satisfied when he saw the smile on her little face and heard her call him Grandpa Fifth Elder. It was worth it. Today's trip was really worth it. Elder EU couldn't help but move closer to Yi Zhao. He chuckled and couldn't hide his pride. Clan leader, I see that Dumpling is very happy. Do you think I'll be able to hug Dumpling when she comes out this time? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt a chill on his neck. Yi Zhao looked at him coldly. What are you daydreaming about? He hadn't even hugged her yet, and now it was his turn? Elder EU, if you want to hug me, say it yourself. If you don't say it, who will know? You're too embarrassed to say it, but you don't want others to think about it? Domineering. Unreasonable. Elder EU snorted and said, That's right. That might not be a dream. But Patriarch, you always have a straight face. Aren't you being too serious? Which child would like it? As he spoke, he retreated to the side. If I stand here, Dumpling might not even come to hug me. Yi Zhao looked at him again. EU, no one will treat you as a mute if you don't speak. Elder EU trembled. Then he straightened his neck. Who's afraid of who? As long as Dumpling was happy, so what if the Patriarch was unhappy? Inside the wall, Chu Luiyue threw away the paper in her hand again. The sound of the zither rang in her ears. She raised her eyes and looked forward. And, the last three. Digression. What's missing today will be made up for in tomorrow's update. Although it's lying in the draft box, it will still be published tomorrow, Waving my little hands to beg for monthly votes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1722. She had barely managed to memorize half of the entire song. In addition, the more she listened to it, the more pain and torture she felt at the beginning. The current Chu Luiyue could basically listen to the zither music calmly and flip through the zither scores in front of her. From over 10,000 copies to the last 3 copies, no one knew what kind of pain and suffering she had gone through in the process other than herself. But fortunately, all of this was finally coming to an end. The 3 transparent pieces of paper floated quietly in front of her. Chu Luiyue held her breath and watched intently. Then she chose the middle one. The moment she held it in her hand, the transparent paper shone brightly. However, Chu Luiyue was already used to all of this as she calmly looked at it in detail. She was so focused that the onlookers outside couldn't help but quieten down, as if they were afraid of disturbing her. Nan Yifan stared at her for a while, his eyes full of scrutiny and suspicion, wandering back and forth between her and the transparent paper in his hand. He seemed to be suspecting something, but he wasn't sure. After thinking about it, he only felt a headache and had no choice but to rub his temples. Patriarch. A weak and low voice sounded. Nan Yifan turned his head to look, only to find that Elder Wu Peng had silently walked behind him without him noticing. Seeing that it was him, Nan Yifan's expression eased a little. Elder Wu Peng, what's the matter? Elder Wu Peng glanced at Nan Yi and said in a low voice. Patriarch, actually, Second Miss didn't mean to make things turn out like this. He had been with Nan Yifan for many years and could naturally tell that Nan Yifan felt sorry for Nan Yi, but at the same time, he also had some resentment. Originally, it was a good experience, but in the end, it turned out like this. This was something no one wanted to see. Nan Yifan thought that he was going to speak up for Nan Yi and frowned. Elder Wu Peng, since things have come to this, there are some things that really don't need to be said anymore. Patriarch, do you know why Second Miss has been chasing after them? Elder Wu Peng sighed. If it's really because of personal grudges, not to mention you, even I and eldest young master would never agree. These words made Nan Yifan's expression change slightly. He was well aware of Elder Wu Peng's character. It was indeed unlikely that he would allow Nan Yi to cause trouble. As for Nan Yuxing, although he was disappointed in his performance today, anyone who had their primordial core shattered and became a cripple wouldn't be able to calm down in a short period of time. So, there's really something else going on? Nan Yifan's expression became much more serious. If you have any difficulties, please tell me, Elder Wu Peng. Elder Wu Peng paused. The thing you asked second young mistress to find seems to be on that Shangguanyu. Nan Yifan's expression suddenly changed. First, he looked around to make sure that everyone's attention was on the Shangguanyu. Then he asked cautiously, really? Elder Wu Peng gently nodded. This old man has used the Great Star Catcher plate to deduce. Second young miss also sensed the aura of that thing on her body. There shouldn't be any mistake. Nan Yifan frowned and fell silent. If that was the case, then it was understandable why Nan Yi and the others had been chasing after Shangguanyu. Why would that thing be on her body? Nan Yifan couldn't figure it out. I remember that you guys seem to have entered this god-slaying tomb together? Elder Wu Peng nodded as he briefly recounted the events that had transpired. Nan Yifan had mixed feelings. Previously, Nan Yi only said that there was some conflict between the two sides in the god-slaying tomb, but she didn't explain the cause and effect clearly. Now that Elder Wu Peng had explained it, many things could finally be explained. Although it was indeed Nan Yi and the others who had provoked the other party in the beginning. Later on, they had indeed been entangled with Shangguanyu and the others in order to find that thing, and it was precisely because of this that they had been swept into the Black Wall. Some of them had died, and some of them had been injured. In that case, it wasn't entirely Nan Yi's fault. So you're saying that they were one step ahead of you and found that thing? Nan Yifan's expression was cold. Elder Wu Peng thought for a moment and shook his head. Actually, I feel that ever since they entered the god-slaying tomb, they didn't have much time to look for this thing, and from the beginning to the end, Shangguanyu didn't seem to know what we were looking for. When she was fighting with Nan Yi at the end, what she said didn't seem to be false. Nan Yifan frowned. You mean, Elder Wu Peng didn't say anything for a moment and looked up. In the transparent space of the wall, the figure behind the totem sat quietly, determined and persistent. She seemed to have entered a meditative state, and no matter what happened outside, it couldn't cause the slightest ripple in her heart. At this moment, there were only a few transparent pieces of paper in her heart and in her eyes. Perhaps, that thing has always been with her. Chu Luiyue looked at the zither score in her hand. The light flowing on it transformed into notes that constantly overlapped with the sound of the zither in her mind. However, halfway through, it finally got stuck again. She sighed softly, as if she had already expected this result, and didn't show any disappointment. She just threw away the paper in her hand with a calm expression. There were 2 pieces left. She didn't even look at it and directly took the one on the right. Suddenly, she paused and looked up slightly. The space she was in was completely divided into two halves with her as the center axis. On the left, there was a thick darkness. On the right, there was a bright light. The people waiting outside were actually there at this time. So they could see her and she could see them. And in the darkness on the left, there was a person and a zither. Senior Jing. Chu Luiwei turned her face slightly and looked over. Although it was dark, she could still see a blurry figure at the end of the darkness. The sound of the zither stopped. A low and lazy voice sounded, and it seemed to be more provocative than the sound of the zither. Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows slightly. It's been hard on you. Jing smiled. Oh, why do you say that? Chu Luiwei raised her hand and took the other one. If I'm not wrong, no matter which one I look at first, the result will be the same, right? A faint smile appeared on her lips. Whether these so-called zither scores are real or fake, it's all up to you, isn't it? No matter which one I leave behind in the end, it doesn't matter. Because the real zither score must be on the last one. What he wanted was for her to finish reading all the zither scores. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1723. Chu Luiwei heard her own voice echo. She looked around and saw that there seemed to be a transparent and invisible barrier around her that blocked her voice. Every time she spoke, she would see faint ripples on the barrier around her. Her heart skipped a beat. She guessed that Senior Jing did not want the people outside to hear their conversation and set it up. Jing was silent for a moment after hearing her words, then he laughed softly. With your intelligence, you should have guessed it long ago. Why are you only asking now? Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows. You must have your reasons for wanting me to finish reading it. Then she would do as she was told. At this moment, the only reason he asked this question was to seek an answer. Jing's chuckle gradually turned into laughter. Ha! I was right about you. In this world, no one is more suitable than you to be the new owner of this Guqin score. For tens of thousands of years, the Guqin score had been divided into 3 parts and scattered around. Apart from this one, which had always been with him, the other 2 were nowhere to be found. He had been waiting for the Guqin score to choose a new owner, but he did not expect that the wait would be so long. The years were long. He had thought that he would not be able to wait any longer. But in the end, he did not let him down. Clang. Jing plucked gently, and the Guqin sounded again. In that case, I'll help you one last time. Chu Luiwei knew that he was going to help her merge the Guqin score. She immediately restrained her expression and nodded seriously and respectfully. Thank you, Senior Jing. The sound of the Guqin entered her ears. Chu Luiwei lowered her eyes and looked at the transparent paper in her hand again. She looked at the one on the right first. Chu Luiwei quickly finished reading that one amidst the desolate and austere sound of the Guqin. She calmly threw away that piece of paper and looked at the last one. On the transparent paper, dazzling flowing light shone brightly. Chu Luiwei stared at it and then took a deep breath. This was the real zither score. She focused and began to study it very carefully. The strange thing was that there were no words on this piece of paper, only a colorful halo. But as she looked at it, she inexplicably began to match the sound of the Guqin in her mind. Gradually, Chu Luiwei realized that every note of the tune began to be clearly engraved in her mind. She was pleasantly surprised by this discovery. She had listened to this tune countless times before, but she could not completely memorize it. But now, it seemed that she did not need to deliberately think about it. The tune automatically appeared in her mind. More importantly, she could faintly hear that there seemed to be countless minute changes in this melody, as if it had extended to countless possibilities, but she was still able to smoothly accommodate them all. Everything began to flow naturally. Finally, at a certain moment, the tune. Chu Luiwei finally finished reading the last piece. Buzz. A strange ripple suddenly came from Chu Luiwei's dantian. This fluctuation came from the transparent remnant page that was quietly floating in the air. Then, the Guqin score in Chu Liyue's hand suddenly turned into a ray of light and flew into her body. The damaged part of the original page was slowly recovering. The two transparent pages began to connect with each other. Chu Liyue quickly realized that there was a subtle connection between the two. This feeling was indescribable with words. It was majestic, vast, and full of life. They were all closely connected to each other. In the unseen world, there seemed to be a distant and boundless sound of the Guqin reverberating in her body. The force in Chu Liyue's body instantly began to flow rapidly. Then, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth began to crazily surge into her body. Chu Liyue was shocked and instinctively looked at Jing. "Senior Jing, this is..." "Sure." Jing raised a finger and placed it on his lips. In the darkness, Chu Liyue could not see his face and expression clearly, but she heard his voice clearly. It was low, lazy, and carried a hint of inattentive tiredness. "There is a small crack in the fusion of the two Guqin scores. It needs to be repaired with the energy of heaven and earth. Just watch." Chu Liyue's pupils constricted slightly. There was a small crack, but how could it be repaired with the energy of heaven and earth? Moreover, the amount of energy needed was too shocking. Chu Liyue suddenly remembered that when the transparent remnant page was in her body, it had turned into a water droplet and acted as her core of essence. Its ability to devour energy was unparalleled. Now that the two pieces had merged into one, it would be even more shocking. Chu Liyue held her breath. She had never tested how much energy that thing could absorb before, but now it would be even more difficult. Chu Liyue closed her eyes and looked inside herself carefully. The two transparent pages were connected to each other, and the damaged part in the middle was indeed being repaired bit by bit. But it was too slow. At this moment, her body was devouring the energy of heaven and earth around her at the fastest speed. The two thin transparent pages were like a bottomless pit, continuously accepting the energy from the outside, but there was no end in sight. Time passed slowly, and Chu Liyue became more and more shocked. The energy of this Guqin score was already very shocking, but the damaged part was only being repaired a little. The light around her seemed to be gradually brightening. Chu Liyue opened her eyes and looked around. On her left, the thick black was fading at an alarming speed. The bright light was gradually sprinkling down. It was as if an invisible hand had broken the invisible but real barrier in the middle. The light began to penetrate her left and right sides, and the energy began to merge. The wind suddenly blew. The energy of heaven and earth began to rush toward Chu Liyue. The crowd outside noticed the scene, but they didn't feel that anything was wrong at first. But as time passed, they gradually realized that Chu Liyue's body was like a bottomless pit that could easily accommodate all the energy. The abundant and terrifying energy that could cause an ordinary high god to explode and die after devouring all entered her body. Her expression didn't even change at all. Nan Yi's expression became more and more unsightly, and her nails dug into her palms. How could this be? How could this be? Although she didn't know what Shangguan Yu was doing, she still understood that a normal cultivator's body couldn't withstand so much energy. Even if Shangguan Yu wanted to break through, it would be enough after absorbing so much energy. But it had been so long, so why hadn't Shangguan Yu stopped? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1724. Chu Ning frowned worriedly. Will you really be all right? Just by standing there, he could already feel the powerful and majestic energy surging towards him, producing an astonishing pressure. It was as if something was pressing down on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe. He wondered how Yu, who was in the center of the energy vortex, would feel. Compared to Chu Ning's worries, Shangguan Jing and Nan Su Huai were much calmer. Yu has always known her limits. She won't do anything that will endanger her life. You can rest assured. Nan Su Huai comforted. But in fact, he was also very puzzled. Is she planning to continue breaking through? It doesn't seem like it. Although there was a huge gap between a high god and a noble god, there was no detailed classification. Aside from the difference in divine power, there was also a difference in divine body. Therefore, there was a huge gap between a high god and a high god. But Shangguan Yu had just recalled her divine realm and became a high god not long ago. How could she try to break through to a noble god in such a short time? Even if she had the strength now, she wouldn't do it. She had always been smart and knew that breaking through rashly would do more harm than good. Moreover, she hadn't even condensed a divine body. How could she break through to a noble god? Shangguan Jing looked at her without saying a word. He had watched her grow up. No matter what she did, she must have her own plans. There was no need to worry about others. Nan Su Huai glanced at Rong Xiu and saw that he was as calm as usual. His hanging heart calmed down. He said to Chu Ning, "Don't worry, you will come out safe and sound." On the huge wall, with the totem as the center, the blackness had almost completely disappeared and was spreading to the sides. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged with her hands on her knees and her eyes closed. Her thick and long eyelashes cast a faint shadow on her face. Her side profile was beautiful and serene, but there was a noble aura that looked down on the world. Even if it was just a glance from afar, it still made people involuntarily feel reverence and submission, and they didn't dare to have any other thoughts. The energy between heaven and earth surged, and in the end, it all gathered into her body. That piece of damage was also gradually being repaired. Clang. The sound of the zither echoed in Chu Liyue's mind. The two pieces of music finally merged perfectly and became a complete piece. Of course, there were still some damaged marks on one end. What was missing was obviously the third, which was also the last music score. However, 2/3 of the music scores were now gathered in her hands, and they all recognized her as their master. Even she was amazed by the power contained in this treasure. Soon, this much more complete zither score transformed back into a transparent water droplet. Compared to before, this water droplet was clearly a bit bigger. Furthermore, the water droplet was filled with a brilliant light. It was bright but not dazzling. It was extremely beautiful and moved one's mind. Suddenly, Chu Liyue's glabella was boiling hot. Then, the huge totem on the wall suddenly transformed into a stream of light and flew into Chu Liyue's glabella. In an instant, the totem shone brilliantly. An indescribably strong pressure spread out from Chu Liyue's body. "Senior Shangguan, that totem, is it the bloodline inheritance of the Shangguan clan?" Nan Su Huai suddenly asked. Shangguan Jing shook his head. In order to have a totem, one must have an ancestor who had reached the peak. Only such a person would have the power of bloodline, and only then would the descendants be able to inherit it. However, in the Shangguan clan, he was a Taizu. Before him, there was no one who was as strong as him. As for why this totem appeared in Chu Liyue's glabella, he really didn't know. Could it be because of some kind of inheritance here? Nan Su Huai stroked his beard with uncertainty. Regarding this matter, he would have to personally ask that lass. Nan Yifan slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves and gritted his teeth. If he still couldn't figure out what had happened by now, he would have wasted all his years. No matter if it was obtained before or found this time. In short, that thing was indeed in Shangguan Yu's possession. Moreover, it had completely become her possession. The fading color of the wall was enough to explain everything. Nan Yifan was so angry that he couldn't wait to rush forward and take it back. However, there were so many people watching him. If he made a move now, not only would he not be able to take it back, he might not even be able to get away. So, he had to endure it. A rusty aura quickly spread out from Nan Yifan's mouth. He wobbled and almost fell. Elder Wu Peng hurriedly held him up. "Family head," Nan Yifan waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. Elder Wu Peng looked at his pale and haggard expression that couldn't hide his resentment. His lips moved, but in the end he didn't say anything. He just sighed silently in his heart. In fact, after looking at this series of events, he already understood that it was clearly impossible for them to get that thing back. As the family head, Nan Yifan had suffered a series of blows today. Elder Wu Peng was actually very surprised that he could hold on until now. Nan Yuxing's pill of origin shattered and he became a cripple. Nan Yi's tongue was cut off in public and she was humiliated. In addition, Elder Bai Tong was sacrificed. No one would be able to bear so many things. Needless to say, Nan Yifan was still enduring until now. He was probably going to suffer internal injuries from holding it in. However, they really couldn't afford to offend the others present. Other than swallowing their anger and silently biting their teeth, there was nothing else they could do. Luo Yan looked at Nan Yi, whose eyes were red, and his heart ached. "Yi, now that we're done, let's go?" The outcome was already decided. If he continued to watch, it would only make him sadder. Besides, you still have to go back and treat your injuries properly. A mocking sneer flashed across Nan Yi's eyes. Treatment? Given her current situation, there was no way to remedy it. She would become a mute for the rest of her life. Then she looked at Shang Guanyu. Her aura was astonishing and she was in high spirits. There wasn't even a trace of blood on her body. The two of them formed a stark contrast. How could Nan Yi stand it? Endless resentment surged in her eyes and she let out an unwilling whimper. It was so miserable that it made one's heart tremble. Luo Yan frowned. Given Nan Yi's current state, it was useless no matter how he tried to persuade her. It was better to leave this place first. He reached out his hand, intending to forcefully take Nan Yi away. A cold and pleasant voice suddenly sounded from behind. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1725. Even though he didn't mention any names, Luo Yan immediately and keenly sensed that this voice was calling them. He paused and turned back. A trace of vigilance and impatience appeared on his face. What else do you want to do? Don't you think you've harmed Yi enough? Chu Luiwei raised her brows slightly and laughed softly as if she had heard a joke. Why do you say that, Senior Luo Yan? When did I harm Nanny? From the beginning to the end. Weren't you the ones who pursued us relentlessly and wanted to kill us all? They had only carried out a counterattack, so why was the other party so relentless? Could it be that only you are allowed to win and bully others, and that it is a crime for others to resist and defend themselves? Luo Yan was speechless for a moment. He came over halfway and didn't know the cause and effect. After hearing Nan Yi's words, he was certain that everything was the other party's fault. But just now, he finally learned the truth from Elder Wu Peng and the others. Of course, he also knew that Nan Yi herself had to bear a large part of the responsibility for this matter. But he had always doted on Nan Yi and would unconsciously speak up for her in his heart. In addition, Nan Yi's current situation was too miserable. He really couldn't control himself and blamed all his resentment and anger on others. Chu Liuyue's gaze landed on Nan Yi. Nan Yi seemed to have sensed something and looked over as well. The two of them looked at each other. Chu Luiwei asked with a faint smile. Second Miss Nan, are you done crying? Nan Yi suddenly felt a chill in her heart. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave and it was bone-chilling. At this moment, a thought suddenly appeared in her mind. Shang Guanyu, it's really scary. Her hysterical wailing stopped abruptly. Facing such a gaze, she couldn't even cry. Shang Guanyu nodded in satisfaction. Looks like you've cried enough. This Nan Yi was really strange. His tongue had already been cut off by Rong Xiu for sowing discord and distorting the truth. Who would have thought that she was still unrepentant and even dared to cry in front of so many people? He really doesn't want to take my life. It finally quieted down. Chu Luiwei turned around and took a look. It was empty. All the darkness around her had gradually faded away when she had devoured the energy of heaven and earth to repair the music score. When she finished repairing the music score, the last bit of darkness was illuminated by the brilliant light. As for Senior Jing, he disappeared as well. Chu Luiwei looked around. She was in a special space within the wall. The wall had become transparent, so the people outside could clearly see her figure, and she could also see everything outside. However, judging from their reactions, they probably didn't see Senior Jing, let alone know of his existence. Chu Luiwei felt somewhat regretful. She knew that Senior Jing had helped her a lot. In the end, she didn't even have the time to say thank you before they were separated. What a pity. She was silent for a moment, but quickly collected her emotions and turned to look at Dumpling. She waved her hand. Dumpling! You. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had finally finished everything smoothly, Dumpling heaved a sigh of relief. Then she rushed towards her excitedly and threw herself into her arms. She hugged Chu Luiyue's neck tightly with both arms and curled up in Chu Luiyue's arms, rubbing her cheeks intimately. You. Dumpling missed you so much. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed and she hugged her even tighter. I missed you too. For Tuanzi, perhaps only a few days had passed in the meantime. But for her, it had been decades. Senior Jing had said before that she had read faster than expected, so it didn't take her 100 years. However, it was still decades. She didn't feel it before, but now that she was hugging Dumpling's soft little body and listening to her soft and coquettish voice, Chu Luiyue felt a long-lost longing in her heart. She weighed Dumpling in her arms and then took a step forward. The moment Chu Luiyue walked out of the wall, a breeze blew and rolled up the corner of her clothes. There seemed to be a fluctuation behind her. Her heart skipped a beat, and she looked back. The black color that had spread to the edge instantly scattered like thick ink. The stone that had become crystal clear not long ago was quickly dyed black. In less than a quarter of an hour, it returned to its original heavy and solemn appearance. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, no one would have believed that everything had happened here before. She stared at the black stone for a long time and silently said in her heart, "Thank you, Senior Jing." Although no one answered, she still felt that Senior Jing should be able to hear her. Everything around her finally returned to normal. Chu Luiyue turned around and walked forward. Nanny's body tensed up instantly. She was here. What was she going to do? She was already in such a sorry state. Was she still unwilling to give up? Countless chaotic thoughts flashed through Nanny's mind, causing her to feel terrified and nervous. Chu Luiyue walked over step by step. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. Nanny instinctively grabbed Luo Yan by the side, her face pale. Luo Yan patted her hand gently, then took half a step forward and blocked Nanny with a cold expression. "What else do you want?" Chu Luiyue didn't stop in her tracks, as if she didn't hear his warning at all. Luo Yan's expression turned even colder. "If you dare to do anything to Yi again, I won't be polite." Before he could finish speaking, Chu Luiyue had already walked in front of the two of them and continued walking forward without stopping. They brushed past each other. She didn't even look at Luo Yan and Nanti. The rest of Luo Yan's words were suddenly stuck in his throat, unable to go up and down. Chu Luiyue walked for a while before putting Tuanzi down. Then she solemnly and seriously bowed to Yi Zhao and the other man to thank them. "Thank you, clan leader Yi Zhao and elder Yu, for coming to the rescue." Yi Zhao's expression was indifferent. "Since Dumpling asked for help, we naturally had to come. There's no need to thank us. Besides, we didn't do anything this time." Chu Luiyue straightened her body, curved her lips, and smiled. "Seniors, you're too polite. If they weren't here, the Nan family would definitely not let this matter rest so easily." She, on the other hand, had brought Dumpling to a false alarm and made them worry for a long time. She gently patted Dumpling's head and urged her softly. "Dumpling, why aren't you thanking the two of them?" Tuanzi nodded hard and then bowed to the two of them in a formal manner. "Thank you, Grandpa Clan Leader. Thank you, Grandpa Fifth Elder." Looking at her cute little face, Yi Zhao's fingers twitched. Why did he feel like pinching her? Unfortunately, he was used to being serious and didn't know what to do. He really couldn't bring himself to do this. At this moment, Elder Yu had already bent his legs slightly and opened his arms magnanimously. He chuckled at Tuanzi and said, "Tuanzi, Tuanzi. Dumpling, come and let Grandpa Fifth Elder take a good look at you. Are you injured?" Compared to Yi Zhao and the other elders, Elder Yu's attitude toward Chu Luiyue and Dumpling was very good from the start. In addition, he had helped them a lot both openly and secretly, so Chu Luiyue and Dumpling were naturally closer to him. Upon hearing Elder Yu's words, Tuanzi didn't think too much about it and immediately ran over. In the blink of an eye, she was in front of Elder EU. She lifted her little face and turned left and right, revealing a big smile. Grandpa Fifth Elder, look, I'm fine. Dumpling was also very grateful for their arrival, so she wasn't stingy with her smile and enthusiasm. Elder Yu's heart was about to melt. So cute. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had never seen someone who could transform into a human at such a young age. Under normal circumstances, the juniors they saw were at least in their teens. But Dumpling looked like she was only 3 or 4 years old now. This was a completely different feeling. Even though they knew that Tuanzi had the purest bloodline and had opened the 4th meridian and was definitely one of the best in the younger generation, looking at her cute and petite appearance, they couldn't help but feel pity for her. They couldn't wait to hold her in their palms and give her all the best things in the world. Finally, Elder Yu couldn't help but reach his hand forward, patting her hair bun tentatively and praising her sincerely. Dumpling is so awesome. Tuanzi chuckled. Then, it rushed forward and hugged Elder Yu's thigh. Grandpa Fifth Elder is awesome too. She saw it just now. Those arrogant people from the Nan family were so respectful in front of Grandpa Fifth Elder and the rest. Elder EU. Yizhao. Digression. In the blink of an eye, it was the last day of 2019. She still remembered that she was thinking about opening a book at this time last year. A year's time flew by just like that. This year, I'm really grateful for everyone's company and support. Without all of you, there wouldn't be today's February. In the new year, the journey continues. I hope I can still be with all of you. Happy New Year! Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.